Hi, today I'm very excited to talk with my friend Irina and former member of my Accent Teachers Academy. She came to me a few years ago and she wanted to work on her business of teaching English, and she had a couple thousand followers at the time, which sounds like not too many, but it's quite a lot. And then she skyrocketed. Now she's got about 70,000 followers on Instagram. So I thought, Irina, I want to pick your brain a little bit today about what you can help other teachers accomplish as well, because you've been there before. And so today we're going to talk about how to build a professional personal brand on Instagram, how to create engaging content for your followers, and how to get followers to become customers through the difference between reels and stories. And the last thing we're going to talk about today too is going to be how to build community by using social media and how to engage teachers and students. I'm super excited today because we talk a lot about personality and how we're different and how that gives us our strengths. So check out this episode. If you're a teacher, I hope that you get a lot from today's episode. And here we go, on with the show. I'm Bianca, your personal American accent coach, and I'm here to help you master an American accent in English because your voice is your choice when it comes to how you sound. I try to release a podcast episode every 2 weeks. And so you should really subscribe to whatever podcast platform you use so that you don't miss the newest episode. And by the way, if you want to see the full video of the episode, it's available at Accent Coach Bianca on YouTube. Now, let's get on with the show. Irina, I'm so glad to talk to you today. We've been trying to arrange this for a while, finally today, and we're going to talk about a few really interesting things, especially for people out there listening who are also teachers. So we're talking about building a professional brand, professional personal brand, we should say, creating engaging content, and how to use social media for building a community, which you probably know is one of my favorite things to talk about and do. So before we get into those topics, Irina, tell people a little background about who you are, because I've known you for a while, but they haven't.
Hi, Bianca. Thank you so much for inviting me for this podcast. I'm very excited. My name is Irina, and I'm an English teacher for immigrant professionals. And I see my mission to help my community reach their goals, professional, educational, business goals, because my students are adult immigrants and very often they feel completely lost in a new country. And it's not only about speaking the language, it's also about adjusting to cultural norms, learning about rules and tips and tricks about in and outs of everyday life. And I love sharing my English learning tips on social media, especially on Instagram. Right now, I've got over 70,000 followers, and my reels usually get thousands of views. So I'm very excited to share my journey with you and your listeners. And thank you once again for inviting me.
Yeah, this is awesome. And I know you from when you were in my teachers club, in my Accent Teachers Academy. And even then you were growing, you were doing so well. And it's just a marvel about how you stay on top of things too. Here we are, it's August 7th, 2024, when we're recording this, and the Olympics are in full swing. And I watched the Olympics. I see recently about the shooting and the story about the Turkish guy who was doing, and then I'm like the next day, I see that you've already got a post up already. How does she do
I'm
it?
trying.
You're not just trying, man. You're and with your full-time, I assume it's full-time work, but with your work
Full-time.
at the university and you've got all this going on, I think you're an inspiration. And I wanted to pick your brain for tips and tricks and strategies, like we said, but for teachers who are in the same position or maybe just starting out, and some little helpful things that would be really nice. It would have been nice for me to know when I was starting out too, that's for sure. If you're ready, let's dive right in. I really want to talk about how do we go about, do you think, building a personal brand that looks professional? Maybe you can remember when you started or some tricks that are really helpful for you that you've learned along the way. What can you tell us about personal branding?
I think, first of all, personal branding is very important for teachers, especially those teachers who teach online or want to develop their career into something international. Because when I use social media, when I started using it, I couldn't even predict how it would grow. And I think building personal brand increases teachers' credibility and visibility, because believe it or not, but many people like watching social media reels, stories, videos, short videos, and they get addicted to it. And I think the more people know about you, the more customers you have, the more students you have, the more students want to study with you because they learn about who you are as a person, not only as a teacher. And I think it's a key to develop that relationship with the audience, with the community. And I believe that supporting each other is very important. I love teaching English in a fun way. And you mentioned memes that I created. And I actually watch a lot of those stories and memes about Olympics or anything going on right now. And I noticed how many phrases and expressions there are for English learners. And I sometimes ask my students, do you understand the joke? Do you understand what this is about? And many of them say no. And it gives me an insight that, okay, they study textbook vocabulary, they study textbook English, but they do not really understand day-to-day interactions. They do not understand real English.
And I think I've seen that a lot on your post, literally the words real English or daily English. And that's something that's obviously really important to you. And you're teaching adults who've come to a new place and they're in a new culture in terms of an educational culture, right? And they've got to interact in formal and semi-formal and casual settings, all those things, and some of the inside jokes that we have and the memes and things like that. It just makes your life so much richer to be able to understand those. And I feel like that's a huge skill that you have, is staying on top of those things and not taking things too seriously, maybe, and doing them in a way that feels very personal and realistic and fun, like you said. That's one reason I really love like all your social media. And you mentioned when we talked about professional and personal branding, you said, oh, when I started a while ago. Can I ask you when you started your Instagram, for example, and what it was like back then and what things have changed?
I actually, believe it or not, I think I had my first Instagram page in about 10 years ago.
Wow.
Uh, I had few accounts. One of them was deleted for some reason. I didn't know why. So I would say I have experience using Instagram and I really love engaging with the audience. And I think I followed the whole history of Instagram because in the past it was just posts, pictures, text. And I think Instagram became, or social media in general, became much more engaging because now we can watch reels, we can learn something quickly, we can learn some quick tips. And I love when you post about tips about pronunciation because I don't think I would go and search for something like Google something, oh, how do I pronounce this? But when I see your videos, I say, oh, okay. So it's a great reminder. Oh, this is the word we can use, or this is the word students have difficulty with. So I think it's a great tool of engaging students, teaching them something quickly. And as you mentioned, we can also reflect on what's going on in society because I think learning from the news, learning from maybe TV series, something that is current is very engaging. And I think it's a lot of fun because everyone talks about it.
Exactly. And it's funny because we didn't start out that way, but we are already into the second topic of engagement and content creation and how it's so important these days, especially with our limited time, with our attention span the way it is, with our, like you said, maybe even an addiction to these kinds of things, the screens. Like we as creators, I should say, have to find ways to engage people and stop the scroll and make sure that people who really need our information or want our information, we grab their attention in some ways. Let's talk about engaging content and creating engaging content from what your experience is too, maybe some tips that we can give other people. Because I've seen that your posts have changed. Actually, I feel like it used to be more, how should I say, more formulaic in a way, and now things are much more spontaneous, it seems. Can you talk a little bit about your journey from, now we can say 10 years ago, up until now, and maybe your process of creating engaging content and what you think makes engaging content?
I actually started posting on Instagram, just showing some of activities we did in class, and it was very chaotic. It was just something spontaneous. It didn't have any structure, or it was very random. But I think at that time, everyone was posting in the same way, so
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
okay.
It
And
matches.
I got some interaction with students and teachers, and we started building. And it's amazing how social media connects us all around the world. The teachers, students. I think the pandemic gave a huge boost to that movement, or I would say during the pandemic, more people started using social media, online education, and more people took
Hmm.
it seriously because a lot of people didn't know what to do. They taught classes face to face. And then during the pandemic, a lot of teachers and students and learners said, okay, so what now? What are we
Mm.
going to do now? And many people before the pandemic, they didn't accept the idea of online education. I think they saw it purely as an entertainment, as a way of entertainment. And I think at that time, when I was just posting whatever we were doing, some activities or some tips, or I was just talking, I remember I was just talking, sharing some thoughts, some insights, in my stories. And then I started looking at it as a way of organizing into a business in a way.
Yeah, because a lot in that time, or from a while ago, it Instagram at that point, I think, was more about sharing and getting in touch with people, and it was a Facebook alternative, and we didn't have the idea of this kind of business yet, especially online too, until the pandemic. And I remember way before the pandemic, I did my master's online, and at that time, people thought I was nuts, right? They were like, "That's not a real education,"
Yeah,
you know.
that's exactly what they say. Oh, what? Online?
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Not
You can't
real.
possibly learn information on by reading it on a screen. No, you must be present. And our attitudes changed basically overnight. And also, remember, we had a lot of time on our hands, or we felt, oh my God, I'm trapped inside. I have all this time on my hands. And I think that's where everything grew in popularity and changed so much in terms of what did you mention earlier? I think you said credibility, right? Just the credibility of learning these things, and maybe in bite-sized snippets.
I feel like everyone was online at that time. Everyone was going live. And that's when I actually met a lot of international teachers because it didn't matter what time zone you had. Everyone was at home. People were just going live at any moment, and we had a lot of audience, and everyone was
Mm,
engaged, asking questions. And I think that's when it gained credibility. Yes, it gained
mhm,
popularity, and that's when people actually said, okay, what choice do I have? Skip on my life, skip on my education, or learn something, learn some skill that I can use and adjust to this new reality. And
mhm,
I kept teaching online. Our college, the college that I teach, we got completely to online classes. We set up the whole program very quickly because I think we
mhm.
also had online department.
Yeah.
And
Huh.
I think I was one of those teachers who I enjoyed it. I loved it. And I didn't feel alone. I felt like we have such a great community. Attendance was extremely high because
Mm.
everyone waited for the classes because it was a time for interaction. We had a lot of conversations. A lot of students shared what they went through, and I think it was a way of support. And I think moving to question number three, building community. And that's when I understood how important it was, and it was such a great tool to build community even through the distance, even through the screen. And I told my students, what's the difference if I sit next to you teaching you English or I look at you through the screen? What is
Mm.
the difference? I can
Mhm.
explain the material, you can ask questions, we interact the same way. And I think many of them understood that, yes, it has a point.
Yeah, and community is not just online, and community is not it doesn't have to be what we call synchronous, right? It doesn't have to happen at the same moment. For example, in my community, I have my community platform on Discord, and somebody sends me a message. I see that message maybe an hour later, maybe the next day, depending on time zones. But we're still a community, and it's still, how should I say? It's still a way for us to keep together, to stay together, and to strengthen the ties. That's what I wanted to say. It's a community can be online, community can be asynchronous, and we can still learn, we can still build and grow together and learn from each other. And I think that's how social media and education really got married, right? Because maybe it's just me, but in the old days, I would think my brain is at school. I'm at school physically, right? And I'm in this mode now. I'm in student mode, or if I'm a teacher, I'm in teacher mode. And then I go home and I'm a different person. I completely forget about that stuff. But now our worlds are totally mixed. I know you still physically go to the school back now, but I'm working from home. So like my home is my office and my work is my living room and stuff like that. So I feel like now we've mixed those things and we can't unmix them, right? This person, let me tell you a quick story. This person who I know who does Google Ads, she said, you really don't want to push an educational video. She said, you don't want to push anything on like a Friday or a Saturday or Sunday. People are relaxing. They don't want to learn. But in my experience, me as a person who's scrolling, I'm like, oh, look at this thing. Ooh, look at this recipe. Oh, look at this tip. And I think that those things now are really inseparable. I don't know if you agree with me, but I feel like at any time I'm on my lunch break, whatever, I'm waiting at the doctor's office, I'm learning stuff. And maybe I'm just being entertained by cat videos, but a lot of the times I'm like, ooh, look, information. And I don't know about you, but I feel like we have now we're not able to separate those two times as much as we did before. What do you think about that?
I think that's exactly what you mentioned earlier when you said that my content switched from solid teaching and tips and things like that, of those kind, because I realized that we cannot learn something 100% of the time. Our brain needs a little bit of a break. We need to have some fun. And I've been analyzing engagement with the stories and how people comment. And obviously, and I feel the same. On Friday, Saturday, I want to relax. I don't want
Mhm.
to, yes, maybe I will learn something, but not really something deep,
Yeah.
something very quick.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So, and that's when I wanted to add to my stories on social media some personal stories. And in a way, it works with my content because I show live in the US. And by the way, I just wanted to mention that I live in Florida and that's where I teach. I teach in Florida. And I want to show how life is in the US. I like to travel. We take road trips. So I show cities I visit and I show the differences between states, for example. Many immigrants do not know that part about American culture. And I think, in a way, we are a little bit, before the pandemic, especially, we were isolated as teachers because we know our school, our college, our rules, and we are not really connected with the other world. And I think pandemic, talking about community, I met teachers from all over the world, and I said, oh, they have different ideas. They teach in a different way. And that helped me to understand my students better because my students come from some of these countries. So I understood the idea of teaching, the pedagogy, the rules, expectations. So when my students come to me and ask questions, I say, oh, okay, that's where it comes from. For example, I noticed that many students are perfectionists. They are not going to say anything unless it's 100% accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
now I know where it comes from because teachers are perfectionists. They say you
Mm.
cannot make a mistake as a teacher. You cannot have an accent as a teacher. You have to have an answer to every question. And oh my God, that's a lot of pressure.
Can you imagine just, I don't know, any other profession holding themselves to that standard? Let's say, I don't know, my father was a plumber, and you imagine the plumber comes into your house, you ask the plumber, and he says he doesn't know, and you say, oh, I can't believe it. I can't believe you don't know.
What
How
kind of plumber
unprofessional
are
of you.
you?
Of course it is. It's fine not to know the answers, right? We're human beings. And I think we were often held to these standards. So it's a cycle that continues. And all of these things I feel we're talking about now, I'm seeing how interrelated they are, right? Because like you said earlier, people will, in terms of personal branding, people will come to, let's say, your Instagram because they like you. They like what you talk about. They like how you talk about it. They just like you as a person. There's plenty of people out there who teach English or teach accents or do this or do that, right? Plenty, plenty. But we choose to follow other people and they choose to follow us because there's something about our personality, right? Or maybe they see us as a leader, right? We're a person who takes those risks and we post those things. We have the courage, and so guess what? People follow us because that's what they want to see and that's what they want to look like, or that's what they want to see in themselves. And that's what they see in us, I think. This is my personal thoughts on what we're talking about. Personal branding. You and I, we take this risk, we post things. You have a different style than I do. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's exactly what we want. We want different people out there just being who they are so that we can each find the audience that's right for us and we can help the people who really want to be helped by us. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it's a
That's
wonderful thing.
That's true. It's a wonderful thing. And that's why there is no competition among teachers, because many teachers say, oh, you know what? There are so many English teachers. What am I going to offer? I think we need to remember that we buy from people.
Mm.
We learn from people. We don't
Mm-hmm.
buy a product.
Yeah, yeah.
Product is product, but how you present the product, how you explain it, how you talk about it. And that's why many students connect to our stories. And that's when, talking about content, I try to post something on Friday or Saturday, something something I do in my everyday life, just to show behind the scenes, because I think we're all nosy, right? We're like, oh, what does she do? Oh, where did she go? Oh, who is that person? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
who is she talking to?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe when you were a student in the elementary school, everybody's, oh, who is that? Who is that? Who's the teacher? I saw my teacher in a store and she talked to
Right.
someone. So who is that person?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a nature, it's our nature, human nature, to want to peep. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, a lot of teachers don't feel comfortable sharing their life, but I think you can definitely limit how much you want to
Yeah.
share and what you want to talk about, because I don't, for example, talk too much about my family, but I
Mm-hmm.
talk about things I do. I talk about
Mm.
activities
Mm-hmm.
besides my
Mm-hmm.
profession that I do. And I
Yeah.
think, in a way, I want to motivate my students, because I'm an immigrant. I am an immigrant teacher. I have an accent, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to show my students, listen, you not only you can be successful in a new country, you can teach. If you qualify, you
Mm-hmm.
pass the test, you can teach. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you have business ideas, if you have educational ideas or plans, you can definitely accomplish them. And then how your life is going to change. So I want to also show them that you're not learning English, but you're learning what comes with English as a
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
result, how your
Mm-hmm.
life is going to change. And
Mm.
when I show, and I think it's easy to do in Florida, because Florida looks like this paradise, touristic place.
Good
All I
point.
need
Good
to do
point.
is just walk on the beach, and everyone, oh my God, I want to live in Florida.
It's a really good point. So a lot of the things that we show as here's the success you can achieve for students or whoever, it's very aspirational. It's, oh, I want that. I have this pain. I have this desire. I want that. And it's so much easier to do when the lighting is nice, when you have a sunny sky in the
Right.
background. What a good point. Yeah, you have an extra, how should I say? It's almost like a character, right? The place where you are, it's almost like a character in your social media to me. I have a cat, and a lot of the
Oh,
times the cat is here with me, and
oh,
everybody
I
knows my
love
cat.
cats. Yes.
So everyone's got their thing, right? There's this personality. You're the Florida girl who's getting people into the life that they want and giving them the confidence that they need to really go for that success. And we all have a different thing. Like some people I follow are more academic and nerdy, and I know that I go for them for specific information. Other people, they're these big names, but like you said, I want to check their stories and I want to see, oh, what did they have for lunch today? Something like that. And so, as us teachers, I think maybe one big takeaway for people is to be yourself in that is your personal brand is you. Like you said earlier, what are you selling? You're selling you. Well, selling, I don't want to say selling. I want to say like you're offering yourself to people.
You're this
Yeah.
middle person between,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is you, this is English. Let me take you to that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
English.
Yeah, exactly. Because anybody can go to the library and get a book with grammar and things like that, but that's not as much fun as holding Irina's hand and just like going along with her and looking at the things she's pointing out to me. And that's how I see it, at least. So you choose the journey that you want to go based on the person that you like. We're travel buddies in this journey, is how I'm seeing it. So along with that, I wanted to go back around to the beginning and talk more about engagement in our posts based on, like we said, our personality, who we are. If you had to characterize your style or your process or something like that, if I looked at your Instagram versus, I don't know, somebody else's Instagram, right? How would I see you in terms of the style of your posts? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. This is something I really like. And I actually started Instagram because I love watching pictures or beautiful videos. They inspire me. I like this aesthetics, you know. But it's not only about beautiful picture, because if our goal is to engage the audience, we have to make sure, number one, they don't switch to the next person, because remember, quick information creates short attention span. So we have to, and I know a lot of teachers are overwhelmed with this. And it's in a way, I had to read some marketing books, because it's, for me, I love reading about, I love learning about marketing. I love learning about sales, because we think we choose something because we want it, but actually when we start learning about all these techniques, it's not our decision. We were led to that decision. And
Magically led.
yes, so to keep the audience engaged and to receive a lot of communication, and I like to talk to my audience, to my community in DMs and comments, and I think it's good for Instagram, it's good for social media, because it sees your engagement. Your engagement is high. Instagram starts promoting your videos or your stories because they're engaging, because they attract more audience, more people. So, for example, rule number one, we have to understand that there are different types of context on Instagram. We have reels, we have posts, and we have stories. For example, for stories, I try to choose different kinds of content. For example, it could be a video, a picture, questions. I like quizzes, but I don't put quizzes that are too long. Maximum 3 questions, 4 questions, because once again, if it gets too difficult, people just skip. And I like to show real life success, not just me, but my students when they achieve something, because I think it connects my audience to me, and they see sometimes themselves in my students, because that's what they go through. And as a teacher, and I've been teaching for more than 20 years, sometimes we lose that connection. We think, oh, okay, everybody knows that, right? Oh, this is easy. Oh, everyone knows that. But then new students come, new immigrants come, and they have new needs, different challenges, something we did not experience in the past, for example. And that's why I think it's important to share the student's journey, student success. And I like to interact with my audience by asking questions. So I ask them, why do you learn English? Where are you from? What do you want in life in general? So I think creating that conversation in my stories or my reels is important, because people feel connected, they feel engaged, they feel like they participate. It's not just about me, it's also about them. And I sometimes share the questions they ask in my stories, and I need to do it more in my reels. I keep forgetting about it, because when your audience sees the questions, they say, oh, I have the same question. And thank you for answering it.
Yeah. I think what you mentioned before was really interesting, and a lot of people who are starting out on social media, they don't even know the difference between these things. So I'm gonna list off a couple things you mentioned, and maybe a couple more, and maybe you can tell us the, how should I say, the goal of each kind of Instagram post. For example, we have stories, like you said, right? We have posts that are reels. We have posts that are not reels. And then we also have lives. You didn't really mention lives, but I know that you go live. So maybe you can talk about the differences between each. Oh, this is better as a reel, but this would be better as a story. I think you mentioned stories are more for like behind the scenes kind of thing, maybe a quiz, something like that. Was that right?
That's correct. And that's a great question, because even though trends change, because for example, Instagram lives were very popular during the pandemic, I think now they are not as popular, because what is Instagram live? Instagram live is usually a long video, let's say 30 minutes and up. And many people don't really have time right now to watch video that long or that often. they
Mm-hmm.
choose sometimes to watch it. But if we go live every day, a lot of people say, oh, you know what, I'm going to watch it tomorrow. And then they just forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I would say reels and posts, but especially reels, are great to capture new audience.
I'm just going to repeat that for everybody. To capture new audience members, what you want to focus on is reels, right? Okay, why would that be the case? What makes reels special?
I think in a way Instagram promotes reels right now because they introduced the feature, I think about a couple of years ago, and Instagram as a platform still promotes reels. And if you check your recommended or maybe your popular posts, you see a mix of posts and reels. And I think personally reels and videos get more attention because sometimes when we see something is moving, we click on it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think if you want to engage, if you want to capture new audience, if you want to gain followers on Instagram, you need to focus more on reels. And the same way, try to change the way you do the reels. A lot of people think, oh, reel is where I need to dance. No, we don't need to dance. We don't need to dance. That's the good news. Sometimes a lot of people like talking videos. They like some kind of quick tip, short. And if you're a teacher, I think we're great at that. Something comes to your head, or maybe a student asks a question. So instead of just answering that question in front of one student, you can actually record yourself and post it as a reel. And then it captures a new audience and more people relate to the same question and more of them listen to the answer. And that's what builds connection to you as a teacher. And that's what builds your credibility because people say, oh, she knows.
She
That's when
knows
they
one
want.
thing, she probably knows other things too.
Exactly.
So,
And that's when
yeah,
they go to other reels and check what else you have to say. And that's what they like to follow.
exactly, exactly. So it's about personality, it's about engagement. And you're thinking the most engaging thing these days is going to be reels for sure. And then stories out of that.
I would say reels are great for new audience.
Okay, okay.
Stories are great to build that connection and
Uh-huh.
trust with your present audience, because you caught their attention. Now, what
Yeah.
else? And that's when we
Uh-huh.
show, for example, behind the scenes, or maybe
Yeah.
this is my lesson, or this is how I prepare. And
Mm-hmm,
I think
mm-hmm.
it also builds long-term connection, long-term trust with the
Exactly.
audience you already have.
They see that it's not just some video that's been posted. They see that you were a real person, you still are a real person, right? They could probably even just reach out to you if they wanted to. So that actually reminds me that we should talk about the things that you're doing now so that people can get in touch with you. So how is it that people can find you? Is Instagram the best place for you?
Instagram is the best place for me right now. I don't know what's next, but for now, Instagram is the best place. It's english.irina.usa.
Mm-hmm,
That
mm-hmm,
is my Instagram. And currently, we are registering students for speaking bootcamp. I know, Bianca, you focus on pronunciation. I focus on speaking in general because
mm-hmm,
many of my students have that fear of speaking. Many
mm-hmm,
of them come to the United States as adults. They learned grammar, they learned the rules, they read books. They are perfect in grammar and doing exercises, but when they come to the United States, it's all about communication.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's all about talking to your kids' teachers, to bank. You have to
Mm-hmm,
call, you have to
mm-hmm,
rent an apartment.
mm-hmm.
You need to communicate. And that's exactly when a lot of community, they feel not only lost, but they feel scared.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they need that confidence. They need to know that it's okay. Like you said earlier, they need to know it's okay to make mistakes. You make a mistake, you move on. And there's a big difference between comprehensibility and getting a job done versus perfection and accuracy. And it sounds like most of the time there's this great phrase, there's this great quote saying that the perfect is the enemy of the good, right? So
Absolutely.
my perfectionism is stopping me from just doing a good job. It doesn't have to be perfect. So a speaking boot camp makes a lot of sense because you're really just throwing people in there and literally showing them it's okay to make mistakes. You're here to make mistakes and to learn that It's okay, life goes on. And the more important thing is probably the courage to do that, right?
Courage and the habit of speaking. They
Yeah.
just have to start speaking. They have a
Hmm.
lot of knowledge. Adults have tons of knowledge. They know
Hmm.
vocabulary, they know grammar. Speaking is just about putting it all together
Yes,
and
yes.
using your skills for communication,
Yeah,
expressing your ideas, connecting
yeah.
with people. And I have to teach my students again, I have to tell them, you cannot learn something if you don't make mistakes. We learn by making mistakes. And then
Hmm.
it's good to receive feedback and then correct, try it
Hmm.
again, and then eventually you get better.
Yeah, exactly. Even the biggest failure, it teaches us more than the greatest, let's say, success often, because we didn't learn anything when we succeeded, probably, unless we made a lot of mistakes in getting there, right?
I think we learned, and it
Yeah,
feels good to succeed.
yeah.
The problem is when students do not do anything,
That's
when
what I
they
mean.
just
Yeah.
plan.
Or
Oh
it's just
yeah,
luck. Oh, I succeeded because I was lucky, right? I didn't
yes.
know how to say this word, but I said it and it came out right. But the next time, who knows? I don't know. And I feel like, yeah, I feel like the success feels good, but I think we learn more from failures,
I think
So
that's an excellent point. If they think they succeeded by accident, they don't learn much. But if they
mm,
succeeded because of their actions, because of
yes.
their consistency,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think that's when they really feel accomplished. That's when they
Yes.
get that self-confidence back.
Uh-huh.
And I
Uh-huh.
think as adults, it's very important because if we move to a new country, we will lose that ground. We don't have
Hmm.
support. We don't know how to do things. And we're adults already. We have to bring
Yeah.
money. We have to find a job. We have to rent an apartment. So I appreciate when my students learn something and then they feel accomplished because it brings that confidence back and then they finally relax. And that's when they say, oh, okay, so I can make
Hmm.
mistakes because it's not scary.
Yeah.
It's a step forward.
Yes, exactly. Life goes on. I made a mistake, no big deal. And I love it too because a lot of times we think of language and grammar and correct and incorrect, but we forget that these are life challenges that language helps us solve. So that it's a big deal. It's a big deal to open a
Absolutely.
bank account. It's a big deal to go through the process of renting an apartment. Even in your first language, that's annoying and difficult and it's a nightmare. So imagine doing that in a language that you don't feel confident in, no matter what your level actually is. If you don't feel confident in doing it, that just makes it much, much worse.
So
So,
true.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I appreciate what you do very much.
Thank
I know
you.
your students appreciate it. And I think that those things go hand in hand because, like we were saying earlier, I do accent, I do pronunciation, and of course, there's the same thing. There's a fear there. For example, when people have all this knowledge in their head, they've got tons of vocabulary, but they're always going to pick the synonym that they know best, right? They're going to know the one that they know what they're saying it correctly. It's probably like a pretty basic word, but they have all those other words, but they're terrified to use some of them because they don't know if they're using it right. And to them, that's a risk. So, like what you do basically, I like to polish those things because you probably already got some confidence. You can open a bank account, things like that. But there's all those other little things in your brain that you have, but you're not using. And I feel like that's such a shame because I know for me, even as a native speaker, I like using a variety of words. I like choosing the word that's a little more sophisticated in this area or a little bit more casual when I'm with my friends. And that gives me confidence too, for example, in Spanish, when I know that I can fit in a little bit better with each group because now I'm not afraid anymore. So I feel like we
That's
do
true.
very similar things. And
I
I,
think all teachers do.
right, right.
And
Yay,
I'm
teachers.
talking about like a role as a teacher in general. I
Hmm.
think we are that bridge. We support our students because I think, listen, pronunciation is one of those painful things. And I know that a lot of people criticize, especially on social media, criticize English learners. Some people send me messages saying, oh my God, what a horrible accent. And if a person doesn't have that support, they
Hmm.
don't have that connection, I think they sometimes, unfortunately, they even stop progressing, they stop learning, they stop doing, they stop expressing themselves,
Hmm.
unfortunately. And I think if we have some knowledge, if we can help people, we have to express ourselves. And I tell my students, do not let someone stop you. Do not let naysayers stop you, because
Yeah.
you are on the way to your own success.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. They're on their way to their own goal, and they and all too often, I would say, we let those insecurities dictate what we're willing to try and be curious about and confident about and courageous about. And we let our insecurities get in the way. But here's the most important thing. You just made me think about this. You know how earlier we said, oh, like teachers don't want to make dancing videos, right? Teachers don't want to do stories. They don't want to reveal personal information. Like you said, you can pick the level that you choose to share with, right? You don't have to go all in. You don't have to dance and do silly things. But here's the thing that I think is super important that you made me realize is that when we hold ourselves back, us teachers, right? And when we say, oh, I'm not going to post on social media because of this or that or the other thing, we're actually doing other people harm. We're doing them a disservice by not having the courage to do that, because really it's for them, right? It's for them to be able to find the help that they need. And so let's say you said, oh, I got this comment and somebody said something about my accent. First of all, who is this person? That says more about them probably than you.
Right.
And now I'm so glad, because now you have so many followers and things like that. Probably, I hope, comments like that just roll off your back, right? It's just them now. But in the beginning, it can be devastating to get comments like that. It's just a
That's
part of the
exactly
thing.
what I wanted to say, because I had a very small community at the beginning on my Instagram followers, because I had about 2,000, 3,000 followers, and then we were a tight community. And then at some point when my reels started getting viral, I started growing very quickly. And I'm talking about thousands of followers a
Yeah.
day.
It was
I
like,
was I was a little intimidated, because every time I logged in on Instagram, I had plus 5,000 followers. I was like, oh my
wow.
God, what is going on? And that's
Wow.
when people started sending messages like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
what is she talking about? Oh, what is that accent? Where are you from?
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, it was, I had to use my own techniques to
Yeah.
motivate myself, what I tell
Uh-huh.
my students. And I had to say, I had to tell myself, I have to just keep going, because
Yeah.
that allows more people to find me.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the importance of stories is when this is where I believe customers come from.
Uh-huh.
Because when people
Definitely.
see you on Instagram and they see your reels, they may not necessarily buy a product, a teacher's
Mm-hmm.
product immediately, because they have to warm up to us, they have to see
Yeah.
who we are. And that's what stories do. They
Mm.
show your personality, they show your personal brand, and they connect you to the audience. And when people see you every day, or twice a week or 3 times a week, you have to decide what schedule is comfortable for you.
Yeah.
When they see you on Instagram constantly on their feed, that's when they say, oh, I want to take that class. Oh, I want to learn that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think transitioning from the reels,
Yeah.
from a new follower to a customer,
Mm-hmm.
that's when reels and stories are connected.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think many teachers unfortunately forget about stories. Many teachers focus on reels and they get thousands and thousands of followers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, they do not see the result in terms of
Mm.
the income growth, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
student growth. And that's when a lot
Mm-hmm.
of teachers just burn out.
Mm-hmm.
They say,
Mm-hmm.
why am I
Yeah.
filming all this? What's the result? And
Yeah.
I think there
Yeah.
is one small step teachers have to take, because you're this close to.
We could say, number one, don't doubt yourself. Get your stuff out there. Just get that habit, like you said. Realize that whatever flaws or insecurities you think you have, that's actually part of you. And that's what people want to come to see. Your personal brand is you. Your personal brand is you. And when we do that, when we make content, we can learn from it. We can make it more engaging, right? We're going to build our own community. And as you were just saying, after a certain amount of time, you're going to get this momentum and you're probably going to stop caring about all those little things. So, number one, just get started, make reels, grow your audience. This is the summary that I'm getting from what we talked about. Grow your audience. And then don't forget about the stories, right? Because the stories are what get people from followers to basically buyers, right? From people to clients, we can say, right? So
Yes.
for most people, that's how they feel like they know you, and they take that step themselves. Let's not forget, people have to choose to see a story. They click on your stories. It's not like a feed where you're just scrolling and you're presented with the reels, right? You have to make a choice and find somebody, follow somebody's stories. So once they do that, they've already chosen you, right? So basically the battle is won if we're talking about getting clients here. So would you agree with that? Those
I
takeaways?
agree 100%. That's a
Awesome.
great summary.
Mhm.
And also, just the last point, every time you post a story, remember that your picture shows up in the, how do you call it? The
On the
feed.
top, right?
Right,
Along
on
the
the
top.
top.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's a great reminder of who you are, because many students remember your face, but they don't remember your name. They don't remember, oh, who is that
Ah.
teacher? What is the, even if they want to watch your reel or story, they don't even
Mm.
remember, oh, what was the name of, what's
Uh-huh.
your Instagram handle? And that's when you show up on their feed
Mm.
in a
Yes.
story, they say, oh, I remember that picture. So they click on it and they find you again.
So to put yourself in front of your audience more visibly, we talked about visibility earlier, make sure you're doing stories, because really we all follow lots of people, right? We follow other
Definitely.
people plenty. So if somebody else puts themselves in front of me, that's exposure, and I'm going to remember their name more often. And if that's a thing that I'm into, it's just going to make me more likely to become a client of theirs. So the same thing the same thing holds true for other people looking for our services as well. So, I feel like this has been super inspirational for people who are teachers who are afraid to get started, or teachers who are afraid to share or put their own flair on things to make things a bit more engaging. And so I really thank you, Irina, for coming today and talking about our 3 topics today, which were personal branding, building a professional personal brand, creating engaging content, and building or using social media to build a community. Because the last thing I wanted to mention was, we said this before, but I wanted to say it outright, is that things are always happening across the world in different time zones. And it's not anymore, oh, I have to be live with this person. And maybe that's another reason that lives aren't as popular, because you have to make a certain time. But I like to remember, community is always there, right? Your community is there. Somebody's awake somewhere. And so sending messages back and forth, that just strengthens the ties of our communities. So teachers, please don't forget that your community is out there and they're always awake, and somebody's around all the time, so you can engage anytime you like. And for me, that's really comforting to know, is, oh, I'll wake up and I'm going to have some messages already, or I'm
That's
going to
true.
send some messages, but I don't expect a response. And I know that, oh, tomorrow I'm going to get something back. And I feel like it just
Definitely.
kind of always keeps us in there. You know what I mean?
And I think connection is always there. Like you said, we're not alone. We're
Mm-hmm.
not alone. Yes, excellent point. Excellent
Yeah.
point.
So much. Okay. Last thing, I promise, last thing. So we were talking about community. We were talking about how you used to be in my teachers community, and I have a community just for teachers who can learn 2 things. Number 1, they can come to learn how to teach pronunciation and accent if you don't know how to teach it. And number 2, you can also learn how to start a business of teaching accents as well. So we met through my teachers club. You then skyrocketed. I'm so proud of you, so excited. And I'm really happy that you came today to talk about these 3 things, because we need to, like you said, community, we need to talk to the other teachers there and help them out as well. So thanks again, Irina, for coming today. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
Thank you so much for having me. If you guys once again have any question, you can send me a message to my Instagram, and it's english.irina.usa. And I'm always happy to help, whether a student or a teacher. Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
having me.
Thanks, guys. And thank you guys for listening today. So happy that you could learn some of these tips and tricks and strategies from us today. And thanks again so much today for joining me, Irina, and you guys for listening today. We try to release a podcast episode every other week, and this could be teachers or students or tips and tricks from me for you guys to listen to in a long format. It could be audio, or it could be video if you're watching this on YouTube. And we usually have a few reels to go with it too. One takeaway today I want you to remember, if you're a teacher, is the difference between posting reels and posting stories. Reels, at least at this time, are to widen your audience, and stories are there to help you turn those leads into clients. I hope that you got a lot more than that out of this episode, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now. If you found this episode helpful in any way, please subscribe and leave a review. It's actually really helpful to me. Now, before I go, I have 2 tasks for you to do. First, I want you to register and come to my free monthly masterclass. They're on the last Thursday of the month. In just 1 hour, you're going to master a specific American accent skill. For example, the TH sound or rhythm. The Zoom registration link actually changes each month. So the second and maybe more important thing I want to ask you to do is to sign up for my mailing list, because you're going to get the registration link each month and you're going to get bonus materials before and after the masterclass that I only send to my email list subscribers. The email opt-in link is down in the show notes. Be sure to sign up for my mailing list and come to the monthly masterclass for free. I'm Bianca, your personal American accent coach, and I want you to know that your voice is your choice. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the show. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.